Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show. I'm your host George Elek, and this is a preview of the St Ledger Day at Doncaster. Saturday's racing at Donny is the preview for this show, and I'm delighted to be joined by oddschecker's very own Andy Holding and the man who often fills in for me when I'm sunning myself on holiday, Danny Archer. Danny, great to have you on today. How are you getting on?
Yeah, good, thank you, George. Yeah, it's nice to be working with you instead of being your substitute for once.
Exactly. Well, you're definitely much better at the tipping side of things than me. I put forward about 2 horses a year, and they normally finish at the back of the TV. Andy, great to have you back as well. I guess before we get into the racing, we're recording this just before racing starts on Thursday, at about 12:15 on Thursday. What are we expecting so far in terms of the weather come Saturday?
Well, I hope we don't get a repeat of what we had last week at Haydock, when I think probably only one of my selections in the end ended up running because of all the non-runners due to the very fast ground. But that's not going to be the case at Doncaster. Intermittent showers, I think, up until Saturday. I think Saturday's going to be the only clear day of the week, which is great for the race goers. But I think between now and then, we're going to get various quantities of rain. I don't think it's going to go too bad. I think the worst it'll get is good to soft. It drains really well. And on the evidence of the first day, just a pretty good surface for all. So if you're a Trueshan fan, which many are, you get to see the Alan King's Charge run on Friday by the looks of it. Fingers crossed.
Trueshan finally getting that rain after a difficult season. Let's get into the racing. The way this is going to work, we're recording this just after final decks for Saturday. So the first, the maiden on Saturday, and the penultimate race and the last race haven't got prices. So we'll look at those. We'll be focusing on the 4 races in the middle, including, of course, the St Ledger. And then I'll put, because this will go out on Thursday, I'll put it to you guys to tip up any tips on Friday as a bit of an Easter egg for those who are listening to this as soon as it comes out on Thursday afternoon or Friday morning. Before we get into the racing, just gonna, as ever, point the listeners and the viewers in the direction of the oddschecker app, where you can get the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and the best tipsters in the game tipping their tips straight to the app as well, including Andy every morning of racing. So do go and download the app. We'll start with the opener, the 1:15 on Saturday, the maiden over a mile. As I say, no prices here as it stands at the moment, but we've got some interesting runners from big yards. We've got a Balding, a Johnson, and a Gosden runner who are both making their second starts here amongst some newcomers as well. And the speed figures from those so far to take a look at.
Nothing really, no. Nothing too exciting in the first race. Probably back this one straight back, really, to be honest. Galantic Jack, probably the most promising of the ones that have had a run. But you just don't know what you're up against here. I mean, as you say, we've got some nicely bred first-time out individuals to factor into the equation that the market will obviously tell us where we stand with. But, Galantic Jack, he ran a nice race behind us called the Parents at Goodwood. That was just an okay race of the track, but I like the way he kept on quite nicely late on. Certainly was knocked about. And Andrew Balding's horses wouldn't be winning too many races first time out. They're certainly the juveniles anyway. They tend to come on for the run. So if held to selection, he'd probably be it. But I'll have much stronger opinions in that first race.
Yeah, as you say, Balding's often coming on for their first run. Danny, anything you like in the first, or should we move on to the second?
Masai Mara is interesting, I guess. Local Dynasty, the winner at Newmarket, since one's finished 5th in the Aiken behind Chaldine, who also runs. But I think the most interesting thing with Masai Mara is obviously one of the crop of Roaring Lion. Obviously, Roaring Lion, I think, passed away more than 3 years ago now. But he's only got that first season crop, and they've actually done quite well. So I think he'd be an interesting one to look at. And obviously, as Andy's mentioned, Galactic Jack's quite interesting because he's out of Jack Naylor, who's an Irish Oak second. So the ground shouldn't be a problem, I think, if it came up as soft as well.
Interesting stuff. We'll move on to the first race we can cover in earnest with prices, and that is the Portland Handicap, where we've got When the Deal Is Done is the 5-1 favourite ahead of Makana at 7-1, Chipstead 8-1, Bergerac 12 alongside Dakota Gold, Burning Cash 14-1, La Quinto, Intrinsic Bond, Count d'Orsay, all 16-1 bar those. Andy, we'll start with you here. Who do you fancy?
Yeah, I've always been a little bit of a fan of this when the dealing's done. The day when he won at Doncaster, at Goodwood last year, and he beat Twilight Falls. I thought Twilight Falls was a good thing that day. I wanted to get with Henry Candy's horse before everybody else cottoned on to him, and I was a little real disappointed with Twilight Falls. I think he finished second or third, and he got readily brushed aside by Roger Teal's horse. And I thought, God, that must be a fair animal to do that to that Twilight Falls. And as what we've seen with Henry Candy's horse, now he's a genuine Group 2 / Group 1 horse. When the dealing's done's not quite in that category yet, admittedly, but he's certainly going the right way. And when he gets his conditions, i.e. a very, very strongly run 5 furlongs, he's a pretty good horse. As we saw last weekend at Ascot, absolutely hit the ball out of the park. Not only visually, but on the clock as well. It's a really fast time. And he bids to go several places better than he did in this race last year when he was only 5th. I say only 5th. It was a good run, particularly considering he was a 3-year-old against the older horses. He's now had another year to mature. Whether he quite gets sort of 5.5, 6, he's open to question. Whether he's an absolute out-and-out 5 furlong horse, I don't know. We haven't got enough evidence or sample size to suggest that. But the way he hit line the other day at Ascot, I mean, he wasn't stopping over that 5. So, in fact, he was eased down late on and he still knocked out a big number. He's drawn 20. Again, we don't know about the draw, whether you need to be down the middle or near side. But I think he's the most talented horse in the field. So I certainly won't want to be opposing when the dealing's done in a rush.
When the deal is done 5-1, as I say, and Sky Bet go a 5th to 7, so 7 places they're paying 5-1. So if you want to be a bit of an each-way thief, maybe one for the each-way multiples as well, that could be a way to go.
He'll definitely be in the first 7.
There you go. There you have it. Danny?
No doubt about that.
Yeah, I think Andy makes a good case when the dealing's done. I think he should go on. I've got to say, for me, though, I'm a big fan of Mackinac, Julie Camacho. I mean, if you look at the run last time out at York, over 5.5, he met all sorts of trouble. He was stuck on the run under Paul Hannigan. Paul couldn't get him out, and then the race was all over by the time he finally got a bit of breathing space. But he was a big eye catcher for me. So I think Mackinac's got to go into the notebook. And one at a massive price. I've been following all year, but it just hasn't worked out. He was so impressive on debut at York last year, and then he finished 3rd to Perfect Power in the Norfolk, is Project Ante. I don't know whether just being a 3-year-old sprinter, he needs another year on his back, but this horse is so much better than he has showed this year. I don't know what's gone on. He's had wind surgery, a gelding operation. It was a bit more like it at York last time out, and he will win a big one at some point. But if I don't mention him, George, he would win, so I've got to mention him just in case.
Yeah, there you go. I was going to say we can't just put up the top 2 of the market. Makana 7-1, and then he did well, went right down to the bottom. Project Dante 33-1 with pretty much every firm. As I mentioned, Sky Bet paying 7 places. You've got others going out. Boyles 6 places, Hills 6 places as well. So plenty of place terms on offer, and I'm sure that will continue going into Saturday as well. 3 there against the field in the Portland Handicap. On then to the 420, the Champagne Stakes, and an open affair in the race before, a trappy 3-horse race. This one, Silver Knot is the 10-11 favourite ahead of Chaldine, who Danny you've already mentioned at 9-4, and Indestructible 9-2. Back the outsider of 3, always the way, isn't it, Danny? Or who do you fancy here?
Well, that's what I was going to say, George. Yeah, they would usually say that. I mean, the problem, I guess, with this race for punters is Chaldine and Indestructible have already met. Only a half length between them in the Acomb Stakes. I think Chaldine was quite game on that occasion and probably better than the bear margin suggests. I would probably have it between Silver Knot and Chaldine. I think Indestructible's got to make up a bit of ground. Silver Knot did it nicely in the Solario. I did think he was a little bit still immature and green. I think, he was getting better the further he went. So he's definitely interesting for next year. But maybe at the prices, just as he's 10-11, I'd probably go with Chaldine just because he's a bit more value. But, the 3 runners in a Champagne is quite disappointing. So it wouldn't be something I'd be too keen on getting involved in.
9-4 Chaldine, tentative, I guess, selection there from Danny. Andy, how do you see this?
Yeah, I think this is going to be just a messy tactical affair, and I think jockey tactics and how it pans out is going to be more of the key factor to determine the winner than anything else, because I don't think there's a huge amount of difference between these two ability-wise, Chaldine and Silver Knot. They're both clocked virtually identical times. Chaldine 91 in the Acomb and Silver Knot, I think it was an 89 or a 90 in the Solario. But the one thing that Silver Knot's got going for him that perhaps Chaldine hasn't is the fact that he's made all the running. That was 2 runs ago. So I think this race is going to become down to a horse who can quicken off the front or quicken the best. He might just be in the best place to take advantage of that if, of course, William Buick reads the script and thinks, well, nothing else wants to go on, I'll do the donkey work. It's been a kind race as well for Charlie Appleby. He's won it without strip and emotionless, so it's a race where he's got a little bit of previous. I do like Chaldine. Agree with Dan. I think he's a lovely horse going forward. He showed really admirable qualities to win the Acomb when he got headed by Indestructible, of course, rear poses. So a tightly knit affair, a nasty one from a betting perspective, not knowing the tactics. But I think if you're an in-running merchant and you see Silver Knot in front in the first couple of furlongs, then he's probably one to press up on.
I think Andy makes a good point there, George, but he's a bit keen, Chaldine. So if Silver Knot settles and can quicken off the front, he could just ruin the race in effect for Chaldine.
Interesting.
Probably my only good point I'll make on this. On this
I don't know what price you'll be taking if Silver Knot goes forward and Chaldine takes a pull, though. Surely you'd be, that you wouldn't have thought people would miss it. But either way, Chaldine 9-4, but Silver Knot seemingly maybe the rightful favourite at the very, very least. Onto the Kazoo Park Stakes over 7 furlongs to 255. Kinross 7-4 favourite ahead of Garris at 5-1 and Sacred at 6-1. Alsa Hale 8-1, Jumbie 10-1, Double or Bubble 10-1, New Energy 14s, Misty Grey 20-1, the Wizard of Eye 33-1. 9 runners here, so you're getting your 3 places as it stands. Although do remember that if post-final decks, if a couple do come out and we suddenly have 7 or 6, then you will lose one of your places here. Andy, Kinross, the 7-4 fav, are you looking to get with or oppose?
Yeah, he's become a real specialist at this trip. I've almost kind of like lost track of how many good 7 furlong races that there are in the calendar. Certainly of late, we had the Lennox Stakes, didn't we, at Goodwood, which is the real definitive guide to that specialist trip throughout the rest of the season. We then, of course, had the City of York Stakes at York, which Kinross took. We've got this race, and then there's the Hungerford Stakes, of course, which took place prior to that as well. So there's plenty of form lines and strands to draw together off those respective contests. And I think Kinross probably comes out the pick of the bunch, doesn't he? He probably should have won the Lennox. He didn't get the clearest of runs up the inside, and one of those races that slipped through the grasp of Frankie. But he made amends last time out in a similar race at York, beating the same kind of horses. He was really good that day. And I think that's the key to him. I think he's better on a track where there's more wide open space and it pays to come off the gallop, whereas sometimes Goodwood horses can get away from him down the hill. And there is a bit of a bias attached to Goodwood, as we all know, whereas hold up horses with a turn of foot that come off the gallop are often suited by Doncaster. The beauty about Kinross as well, he's won at the track before as well. So, he's got that on his CV, which has got to be worth bearing in mind. So there's lots going for Kinross. I think he's a big player. I think from an each way perspective, maybe Double or Bubble's another one to consider. On her day, she's very good. She is an out and out 7 furlong horse. They have tried her at 6, but I do think this distance is definitely best for her. Thought she did really well to win on rain softened ground the other day at Goodwood. Similar conditions to what she might face on Saturday. She beat a good guide on that occasion as well. There was an Andrew Baldwin horse, Happy, I can't remember its name now, Happy Guest or something, that finished 3rd, and that ran well in the Lennox. So, on line through that horse, she's not a million miles away, the Kinrosses of this world. So I think Kinross is the right favourite, and wouldn't surprise me if he went and won. But if you had a gun to my head out to have a bet at the prices, I'd always look to put something up each way, and Double or Bubble fits that category.
Double or Bubble 10-1 with Sky Bet, Paddy's and Betfair Sportsbook. Kinross 7-4 pretty much across the board on the oddschecker grids. Andy, I'll never hold a gun to your head and force you to have a bet. I can promise you that. Danny,
as long as it's a water pistol, then that's
that'd be fun. A super soaker.
Yeah.
Danny, how do you see this?
Yeah, sorry, George, a bit boring here. I haven't been that overwhelmed with the 7 furlong horses this year. I think the Lennox Sandrine won it quite nicely, but I thought the Kinross race starting out at York, I just think they're kind of meeting each other. They're like two old warriors, or a lot of old warriors in a wrestling ring who just keep meeting, and you get the odd different result. But Kinross, at the end of the day, is usually the one who comes out on top. So I think he's pretty tough to beat based on the form and the figures so far. But like Andy, Double or Bubble did well to win from an uncompromising position. I thought at Goodwood last time out. The ground as well didn't massively suit, and I think over this 7 furlongs she still can prove better. Garrus, I'm not sure about the trip. Alsa Hale is a bit of a nutter. Jumbie needs to improve a bit more. Sacred has been, I know Andy loved Sacred, a couple of pods ago, but been so disappointing this year. So I think Kinross is the most solid one, but Double or Bubble at a bigger price to chase him home.
Lovely stuff. You both agree. Kinross, the likely winner. Double or Bubble, the one to take if you're looking for any triangle.
Who's that with, George? Who's that 10-1 with? That strikes me as being way bigger than I thought.
That is with Sky Bet and Paddy's and Betfair Sportsbook. Get on the phone.
Much bigger than anticipated. I've just got a price guide in front of me here, and she looked about a 13-2 shot on that. So yeah, 10-1, much bigger than I thought.
There you go. Well, get on, guys, because Andy's going to make that go all blue fairly soon. So take the 10-1 when you can. On then to the big race of the day, the big race of the weekend, the big race, well, in the UK of the month. It is of the month as well. The St Leger Stakes, of course, the St Leger. And New London is one of the shortest priced St Leger favourites we've seen for a long time. Even money, but odds on with most firms. Even money. Sky Bet and William Hill sticking their necks out there. Eldarov, so impressive, of course, at Royal Ascot, and an unlikely winner in running, just getting up 5-1. Second favourite, Huya Mal, 13-2. Haskell 7-1. French Claim 14-1. Emily Dickinson 20-1, Gian Valetto 25s, El Habib 100-1, and Lizzie Jean 200-1. Now, Andy, before we get into the preview, I mean, I think if you'd showed me this market 6 weeks ago for the St Leger, I think we'd have all been fairly disappointed. A few big guns not really showing up here. What do you make of the renewal?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't got a great deal of strength in depth. I'd agree to that, but I do think it's a good betting heat. Again, the lads in the oddschecker offices got me to preview a race at Doncaster, and I just thought, well, I might as well logically pick the St Leger just over a week ago, and I went with Huya Mal as a standout bet. I thought at the time, around about 8-1. He's not that much bigger, shorter now, but I still think he's value at that price, 13-2. Now we know the full field, what the ground's going to be like. It's hard to see Huya Mal not finishing in the frame here. I was really impressed with his victory last time out. I know he only beat Perfect Myth, but Perfect Myth is a useful filly.
Perfect Alibi.
Sorry, beg your pardon, Perfect Alibi, yeah. Who'd obviously proven herself in patent company prior to that at Newbury. So he wasn't beating any back number, and he made her look a little bit pedestrian late on. It was off a good gallop as well. It went a really good pace. Perfect Alibi was a front runner, made sure that there was no hiding place. And Huya Mal just breezed by her, quickened away, won head and chest. I thought that was a really good effort. Yes, he's got to find, of course, a little bit with New London on their previous performance in the Gordon Stakes. But the ground was good to firm that day, and that's very much the surface that New London requires or prefers. His only disappointment in his life came at Chester. Now, admittedly, he probably wasn't quite the horse he is now. That was only his second start of the season, and he has improved immeasurably since winning at Newmarket. Then, of course, at Goodwood on fast ground. But if there is ease in the ground, there's likely to be with the showers around. It's not exactly in his ballpark, whereas Huya Mal will relish the conditions. He won on good to soft last time out, so that's not a problem for him. I mean, all in all, I think, that's the key form line, isn't it, that Gordon Stakes? The very, very fast time. Deauville Legends franked the form subsequently the second. Jack Darcy, the fourth horse, just got beat by a nice horse out in France. Crested won at Windsor next time out. Even West Wind Blows did everything wrong the other day over in Longchamp, and that still managed to win. So that is the key angle to the race. I think the winner for the St Leger will come from either New London or Huya Mal. I'm not even factoring in anything else. But at the prices, given the ground is definitely going to be more in favour of Huya Mal, and of course he's proven another trip as well. He's already proven that he's won over a mile 6, whereas New London hasn't. He's definitely the bet for me. He's a really strong choice at that price.
Huya Mal 13-2, best price with Paddy's, Betfair Sportsbook and Bet Victor. The strong each way selection ahead against New London there for Andy. Danny, what do you make of the New London price before we get your selection, or maybe New London even money is your bet for the race?
It is a bit boring, but I mean, I think that coming into the year, they thought he was their 3-year-old superstar, Derby, Ledger, everything. And obviously, he blotted the copybook a little bit at Chester. I guess you could argue changing of the guard, Frank the form, to an extent. Obviously, 5th in the Derby, but then 1 at Royal Ascot, hasn't been seen since. I just think he's getting better as he goes up in trip. He was impressive at Newmarket and the Goodwood. I just think he's a bit relentless, like Hu Yamal. And I just think Andy says about the soft ground. He won on his debut on soft ground. I don't think he was ultimately in love with the ground, but he did really keep on quite strongly. And I just think it's interesting that Godolphin had quite a few in it at deck stage, and in the end they decided to just rely on him. So I think Eldarov blotted the copybook in France. I think he's tough to fancy now after that. So I think Hu Yamal is the interesting one, as Andy says, because Ryan Moore after the race, Ryan Moore dropped his whip. So I think they were saying, he said if he'd had his whip, he would have finished a lot closer to New London. So I think he's the interesting one at a price. But I'd be with New London. And I have to mention, just obviously he's got a great record in the race, but Emily Dickinson is a bit of a rogue in terms of how she runs. She takes a long while to get going, but her last 2 runs, she probably could have won at Goodwood last time out in the Lily Langtry, but she took an age to get together, but looks like she's absolutely crying out for this trip. So I think her and the other filly, Haskoy, have to have a mention, but it would be New London for me, and maybe at a bigger price, Emily Dickinson running into a place.
New London, even money with Sky Bet and Hills, going to justify the short price there for Danny, but also a bigger price fancy as well. Emily Dickinson, Ladbrokes are 20-1. Speckles are blue on oddschecker, so you're not the only one who thinks that Emily Dickinson could be the joker in the pack. That is our St Ledger preview. We've got a couple more races on the card. We've got the mile handicap, the penultimate race, and then also the Rugby League World Cup in Doncaster handicap, which is an interesting name for the final race on the card. No prices there. Daniel, I'll come to you first. Anything in those last couple of races to keep an eye on?
I wouldn't be too keen on having a go, but I think Tyrrhenian Sea in the 405 is an interesting one. One of the most beautiful horses if you ever get to look at him. He's a phenomenal looker. He shaped okay at York last time out. I don't think he's gone on as much as the Varian stable had hoped, but I'd probably give him a nod. And also Symbolise, who was arguably disappointing to get beat at first last time out, but I don't think he liked running in a free runner race and could be more at ease back in a big field handicap. But nothing I'm too keen on the rest of Saturday.
Andy?
Yeah, I'd have to go along with Danny with Tyrrhenian Sea and flag up that race that he finished 3rd in last time at York. That was the best handicap run so far this season on our time figures. An extraordinary number knocked out by Blue For You, David O'Mara's horse, who beat his stable companion Escobar, and probably the benchmark for all mile handicaps so far this season in Orban, of course, winner of the Goodwood Mile and placed in various big handicaps so far this season. But I liked Tyrrhenian Sea running that race. Wasn't good enough. The day had every chance, but got beat fair and square. But even getting beaten a couple of lengths by the winner, I think that's still good enough to be considering him a major factor in that 405. And in the final race, also I know quite well, Farhan. I own the horse that beat him, partly. I own the horse that beat him at Chester last year. And he's gone on the course to win the November handicap, and more significantly at Doncaster. So we know he's proven over the course and distance with a little bit of ease in the ground. And he managed to win at York last time out on ground that not necessarily would have suited. It was good to firm. So considering that he managed to book the trend of his normal profile last time out, then back on his ideal autumn conditions, there's no reason why he won't go on. I like the jockey booking of Ryan Sexton as well, just to help him along with that burden of 10 stone too. So far and in the last.
Because this has been recorded on Thursday, just for those who are jumping on it nice and early, I will, rather than going through all the races on Friday, because this will age and date very quickly, just throw it out to you guys. Anything that the people should be looking out for on Friday? Andy, I'll come to you first.
Got a healthy amount of respect for Trillium in the Flying Childer. She's up against Platinum Queen, who's a real trailblazer and ran an unbelievable race in the Nunthorpe itself, finishing second, of course, which is a sterling effort for a 2-year-old, albeit they do get the weight for age. So, some could argue that was an expected run, if you like. But I thought Trillium was really, really impressive last time out. Beat George Scott's, up till then, best horse, one of the best UK horses over 5 furlongs, in the shape of Rocket Rodney. And I think that's a real strong piece of form. I love the way she powered through that day. She hit the line really well. I think this race will be run to suit as well, because I just like horses just coming off the speed at Doncaster. Whereas the Platinum Queen trying to trailblaze, it's difficult. As we saw with King of Stars yesterday, to try and make all the running at Donny is really difficult. You tend to get picked off late on. So I'd imagine Pat Dobbs will have a target on the back of Oshin or on the Platinum Queen and follow her through, and hopefully she'll come through strong in the end. And as we mentioned at the top of the show as well, I'll be really, really keen to see Trueshan tomorrow. I actually think that if you can get 8 to 15, 4 to 7 for him, that is a really, really good bet, because he is an absolute monster when he's got soft ground in his favour. There's nothing better than him in that category. And if the second favourite Coltrane is the sort of the benchmark of the opposition, we saw how far he got beat at York. So he's going to come back. He's having to come back off the canvas and getting beaten about 15 lengths by Quickthorn. So that is very much Trueshan's race to lose. And of course, he beat Coltrane readily at Goodwood on ground that probably wouldn't have suited him. So I think 4 to 7, 8 to 15 for him. I wouldn't normally advocate an odds-on favourite, but I think he should be 3 on. I think he's he's a very talented horse, as we know.
Could well be fairly soon. You'd think a bit of 2 to 5 around now, but 8 to 15 with Bet Victor is the best price out there at the moment. All that 4 to 7 gone, and as you say, Trillium 2 to 1 best price, 235 on Friday. That is with Coral. Danny, before we let you go, anything for you on Friday?
Yeah, in the Mallard, I quite like the first race of the day. 2 probably against the field for me there. Going Gone is trained just down the road from me by Jim Ball. But he's been an interesting sort, really. He's improved all season. He caught the eye for me, particularly when he was 4th in the Ascot handicap at the Raw meeting. Arguably disappointed at Newbury on his penultimate start, but the ground was a bit quicker there. And if ground conditions are a bit softer, he's a really strong stayer, as he showed in the Shergar Cup. So him, and also Wise Eagle, who's kind of turned a corner recently for the Nickel Yard. He's won back-to-back races, now up to a career high mark of 94. But there's another who should be suited by the ground. So probably those 2 in that. And maybe Belosa and Mitros on Fire later on the card. They both run in the 3:45. Belosa's been disappointing so far this year, but I think is another one to note going forward. Should really be improving. I think has now had wind surgery and, is better than it's showed so far. But my big fancy of the weekend, George, actually is at Leopard's at the Curragh on Sunday.
Here we go. This is what we want.
For Dermot World in the Moyglare. She's called Tahira. She's only run once, but she was so impressive at Galway, won by 5.5 lengths. She travelled like a dream. It was her first start, and she powered clear. The second's won since. Most interesting thing, she's a half-sister to Tanawa, who, of course, is a Breeders' Cup winner and a French Group 1 winner. And she takes on the Moyglare favourite, which is Meditate. But Meditate won over 7 last time out, but I didn't think she was actually as good over 7 as she is over 6. Tahira is only going to get better. So I think at 7 to 2, she is a standout price to win the Moyglare for the Master of Rosewell House.
There you go, 4 to 1 best price there with William Hill in the Moyglare over in Ireland is the best bet of the weekend for Danny. There we go, doing Donny and the Moyglare in the same pod. You wouldn't get that anywhere else. Maybe you would, I'm not sure. Cheers, guys. Cheers to Danny and to Andy for sharing their thoughts and their tips and their insight ahead of Saturday's racing. Surely some good value in that. I've got absolutely no doubt. Do download the oddschecker app for the very best prices, as we've discussed today, place terms, free bets, and everything else you need, including some of the best tipsters in the game, including Andy, straight to the app every day of racing. Please do enjoy the racing. As is always the case, please do follow these tips responsibly and do bet within your means. Hopefully it'll be a great weekend of racing ahead. And join us again next week as we'll look ahead to the weekend's racing ahead.